Have you recently been diagnosed with PCOS and maybe you're feeling a little bit lost? With so much contradicting information about PCOS online, you're not alone. Can you have dairy? Do you have to eat low carb? Are you stuck with PCOS for life? And maybe the biggest question, will it be possible for you to get pregnant naturally? We're going to cover all of this in today's video, but spoiler alert right off the bat, PCOS is reversible. Yes, there is a genetic component to it, but even if you're genetically predisposed, it does not mean you can't reverse it and eliminate symptoms. I've seen it reversed with hundreds of clients, and there is research to support this, despite many doctors saying it's not possible. In one example, a study followed 11 women with PCOS for 6 months. The study involved a change in diet, and by the end, all the women who completed the study lost weight, lowered their free testosterone, and their fasting insulin. 2 of the women even got pregnant during the study, despite previously struggling with infertility. It is possible to reverse PCOS, and it's possible to do so naturally. We're going to start off today talking about the cause of PCOS, and then we will get into 5 steps to reverse it for good. PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, and to be officially diagnosed with it, you have to have 2 out of the 3 main symptoms: an irregular period, high male hormones, and ovarian cysts. Now, if you suspect you have PCOS but you haven't yet been diagnosed, here are some other signs to watch out for: irregular or missed periods, as we already discussed, heavy periods, acne, skin tags, darkening of the skin, particularly under the armpits and around the neck, male pattern baldness, excess hair growth on the face and stomach specifically, and difficulty losing weight. Someone with PCOS might have all of these symptoms, or they might have only 1 or 2. PCOS is not only a concern if you're trying to get pregnant, there are other serious side effects as well, including sleep apnea, depression, an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and an increased cancer risk. And for women with PCOS who do get pregnant, there's a greater risk of miscarriages, and they're also twice as likely to deliver the baby prematurely. PCOS doesn't just have a significant impact on your own health, but the health of your baby as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of confusion surrounding PCOS. A lot of women are told when they're diagnosed that it's something that they're going to be stuck with for life. Oftentimes, they're prescribed medications such as metformin to manage it. And drugs like metformin can be very effective at improving symptoms, but they aren't enough to reverse PCOS without making diet and lifestyle changes as well. The reason metformin is so effective is that it improves insulin sensitivity. And this helps because the root cause of PCOS is insulin resistance. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Not every single case of PCOS is caused by insulin resistance, but over 90% of them are. And this is why metformin is so effective for these women. Now, I'm not here to advocate for metformin. It does have a lot of side effects, so that's something to discuss with your doctor. What I will say though is that there are diet and lifestyle changes you can make that improve insulin sensitivity and that can be used to reverse PCOS. And these can work with or without metformin. Let me explain. Insulin is a hormone responsible for lowering blood sugar and storing the glucose in our cells. Every time we eat, blood sugar rises, and as a result, the pancreas pumps out insulin. Insulin resistance starts when the cells in our body stop responding to insulin correctly. They're not taking in the excess glucose as they should. As a result, the pancreas has to pump out more insulin, and insulin levels remain high for long periods of time. And the reason this ties in with PCOS is that high insulin is actually the cause of the 3 main symptoms. Every month, just before ovulation, there should be a big spike in the hormone estrogen. All estrogen is made from testosterone, but high insulin levels block the ovaries from converting it, and the spike in estrogen doesn't happen. So you don't ovulate, which causes your period to become irregular, and the eggs in your ovaries become cysts. And because the testosterone wasn't converted to estrogen, you're left with high testosterone as well. And those are the 3 main symptoms: irregular periods, ovarian cysts, and high testosterone. So by addressing and reversing insulin resistance and bringing your insulin levels down, PCOS reverses as well. Because insulin resistance and high insulin is the root cause of PCOS, that's what we want to focus on when we're trying to reverse it. If we can lower our insulin levels, our cells will become more sensitive to insulin once again. The key to reversing insulin resistance is keeping your insulin levels low as often as you can. And here are some ways to do that. The first one is to swap out carbohydrates where possible. The reason that swapping out carbs can help to improve insulin resistance and reverse PCOS is because carbohydrates are the macronutrient that requires the most insulin to process. Eating carbohydrates spikes insulin drastically, whereas with protein and fat, there's minimal to no spike and no need for insulin at all. So if you're trying to lower your insulin levels, it makes sense to limit the foods that need the most insulin. Now, the study I mentioned at the start of the video where there was a diet change that was made and it improved all of the women's symptoms of PCOS and reversed it for a lot of them, the diet change they made was actually switching to a low carbohydrate diet. The study pointed out that the high insulin levels appeared to be the cause of the increase in testosterone, and that the reduction in insulin was due to the diet change. The researchers concluded that the low-carb diet led to a significant reduction in weight, free testosterone, and fasting insulin in the women with PCOS over the 6-month period. Now, that study reduced carbohydrates pretty significantly. They were eating less than 20 grams per day, and you don't need to go that extreme as long as you're being smart about carbs. Swap them out where you can and choose low-carb options instead. And when you do eat carbohydrates, try to get them from whole food sources. The second step is going to be when you do eat carbohydrates, try to eat them last. And here's what I mean by that. If you are having a meal that includes some sort of protein, some sort of fiber, and then maybe a more starchy carbohydrate, the order in which you eat the food matters. In one example of this, a study had participants eat the same meal 3 days in a row. On the first day, they ate the carbohydrate portion of the meal first, and then 10 minutes later, they ate the protein and the vegetables. On the second day, they ate the protein and the vegetables first, and then 10 minutes later, they ate the carbohydrates. And on the final day, they ate everything together. They measured insulin levels before, during, and after the meal, and the meal where the carbohydrates were eaten last, the insulin levels were the lowest, and by a significant amount. So, like I said, you don't need to reduce carbohydrates significantly if you don't want to, although that can be very effective. But little strategies like this, like trying to eat them after protein and fiber, can make a big difference. Step number 3 is to build muscle. Now, diet is the most important factor when it comes to reversing PCOS, but exercise can help as well. And this is for a few different reasons. When we're exercising, when we're moving our bodies, so when we're walking, when we're lifting weights, anything like that, our muscle cells are actually able to take in glucose without insulin. And this is great because remember, the goal here is to keep insulin levels as low as possible. So if we do our exercise around our meal times, this can be as simple as having a meal and then going for a walk afterwards. Our cells are able to use that glucose without insulin, which is good for our insulin sensitivity. Now, the second reason that more muscle is helpful is because when you have more muscle, there's more room to store glucose. So basically everything can be more spread out, and again, less insulin will be needed. And resistance training is going to be the most effective here. I know there's a lot of information online about how HIIT workouts aren't good for PCOS, and this is true if they're done too often. I talk about this a lot on my channel, but high intensity interval training, which is HIIT, is a type of exercise where you're supposed to be going to maximal effort for short periods of time, recovering, and then doing it again. If you are doing this every day or even every other day, then you're not actually going to be hitting your maximum. And that's where the benefits come from. HIIT only needs to be done once a week. And if you're doing it any more often than that, yeah, it's going to be counterproductive for reversing PCOS. So when you can, stick to resistance training and low intensity cardio, walking, swimming, anything like that, and give yourself enough time to recover in between workouts. Tip number 4 is to stop snacking. Every time you eat, as we've discussed a couple times throughout this video, your insulin levels are gonna go up. And if we are snacking in between our meals, then this means our insulin levels are always gonna be bumping up and they're never gonna have a chance to come back down to baseline. If we are eating 3 meals a day or more and snacking in between, this means that our insulin is constantly being bumped up. If we can avoid the snacks in between meals, this allows our insulin levels to come back down to baseline when we're not eating. Now, if you find that you are someone who always needs to have a snack, it's probably because you're not eating enough during your meals and you're not eating enough protein specifically. I see this all the time with my female clients. They are not eating enough protein. 2 eggs, not enough protein. That's maybe 12 to 15 grams, And we want to be getting closer to 40 or 50 grams at every meal. Trust me, if you can bump up your protein, start by trying to get at least 30 grams at every meal, you're not going to be hungry in between your meals and you're not going to be craving those snacks. And a higher protein consumption has so many other benefits as well. For weight loss, for body composition, for hormone function, the list goes on. And finally, step number 5 is to supplement inositol. Inositol is a naturally occurring substance that we get through our food, but our bodies can also synthesize it to a certain degree. However, a lot of people do not synthesize inositol well. And there are certain things that can deplete it in the body, which is why it is also isolated into a supplement. Now, inositol, like metformin, helps the cells in our body to become more insulin sensitive. It also helps our body to burn fat for energy more efficiently. In one example study where women with PCOS supplemented inositol, they concluded that it was a simple and safe treatment that is capable of restoring spontaneous ovarian activity and consequently fertility in most patients with PCOS. The inositol supplement that I really like and that I recommend is from the brand So Well Health, and it's called Get So Sing. Not only does it combine 2 types of inositol, but it also pairs them with folate and vitamin D, all of which can support healthy hormone function, blood sugar levels, insulin levels, and ultimately PCOS. This supplement has been formulated with women in mind. To check it out, you can head to healthcoachkait.com/get-so-synced. I'll put that link in the description box down below as well. And you can use code KATE10 to save 10% off your order. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section down below which of these steps is going to be the hardest for you to stick to and why that is. I'll try to give you some tips and strategies to overcome these barriers. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.